live. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to the launch of the Puppetmaster's Apprentice. I'm so excited to be here with Lisa tonight. I am Kathy Burnette. I own Brain Lair Books here in South Bend. It's where Lisa and I are. Hang on, I'm going to fix this a little bit. There we go. And just tell you a little bit about the store. We're on Jefferson Avenue. We're basically a children's bookstore, though we do have some adult books, and we focus on inclusive books. So if you're looking to learn more about everybody, come by or give us a call. We are actually closed to customers. Do not come by. Make sure you go online, though. And you can see the green button down there. It says purchase the Puppetmaster's Apprentice. If you purchase it during this broadcast, you will get a signed bookplate. So make sure you do that. All right. If you have any questions, there's ask a question around at the bottom. You could do that. There's a poll. We want to know, what are you afraid of? You could answer that. And if you'd like to make sure we can do more of these, please hit the donate button. We take donations. All right, awesome. I'm going to read to you a little bit about our code of conduct, and then I will introduce Lisa, and we will get started. All right. We are dedicated to providing a harassment-free environment for everyone, regardless of gender, gender identity and expression, age, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, or religion, or lack thereof. All attendees, speakers, and sponsors at Brain Lair LLC are required to agree with this code of conduct. The code of conduct outlines our expectations for participant behavior, as well as the consequences for unacceptable behavior. We would like for you to be considerate, respectful, and collaborative. If you engage in harassing behavior, we will remove you from the event, and we will not let you come back to other events. So we expect you to be good. And we reserve the right to decide what's harassment or what's not. All right, we've done that. Now let's talk a little bit about Lisa. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much
today?
for hosting my launch party. I'm doing great.
So excited. I love the book and I can't wait to talk about it. Lisa lives here in South Bend. As I mentioned, we're both in South Bend with her husband and 2 daughters. When she's not writing, you will find Lisa working as an art director and designer, and most likely daydreaming with a cup of tea in her hand. This is her first novel, and we will talk about how she got here. All right, Lisa.
Yes.
Anything you want to talk about before we get started?
Well, just again to say thank you to you and Brain Lair Books for hosting me. This is so fun. Kathy and I are not, and we're both in South Bend, but I'm at home in my lovely little corner of my bedroom, and she's at her bookstore, which is an amazing, amazing place. So I hope you guys will support her and buy the Puppetmaster's Apprentice through her so you can get a signed copy. And I think we might be giving away a few copies. So
yes. We'll be giving away 3 copies throughout the night. So listen for when we do that. So let's just get started. So
all right,
for one thing, it's 2020. What is it like to be an author with a book coming out in 2020?
It is equal parts thrilling and terrifying, I think, probably like it is most times for most authors. But, you know, to be honest, I kind of don't know the experience any other way. So my publisher has been amazing. Page Street has lined up all these virtual events for me to do. So in lieu of in-person events, this is kind of all I know. And so I've just been really excited about it and just grateful for the chance to get to do it and talk to the Puppetmaster's Apprentice, or talk about the Puppetmaster's Apprentice with everybody. And like you and I were just saying a minute ago, the cool thing about doing all these virtual events is that it gives friends and family and other readers who aren't here in the area, who aren't local, the chance to kind of hop on and learn more and celebrate with us. So that's super cool. And I think
that is super cool.
Wouldn't be doing this otherwise. So I'm really grateful for that.
Well, a lot of my author friends are very, very shy. They don't really like to go out and do things. So does this speak to your side of I am not really a total people person, or are you a people person and you wish you were out there meeting more people?
I think I'm a little bit of both. I'm an extroverted introvert. So I love people and I love to talk with people, but it does wear me out. So afterwards, you'll probably find me flopped on the couch recovering, but I'll have the best time ever while I'm doing it because I just love being with people. So it's a little bit of both. I enjoy getting to be with people in person, but this is great too. And I get to be comfy at home in my own house. So that's a huge perk.
That is a huge perk. I totally agree with that. I am also an extroverted introvert. And I know when I'm done with an event, I can't talk to anyone. I just go and lay down with a book, and that's all I can do. Is like I have to recover, put the stress rubber band out, and then I have to let it go back before I can do something different. Also not a morning person. So I love having these events in the evening. It's a great way to like end the day, just kind of go into chatting, get hyped up about books. You know, it's like my whole life. I love it. All right. So this is a fairy tale retelling. It's inspired by Pinocchio. Talk about why you love them and why you chose this book.
All right. Well, I have always loved fairy tales. I grew up with grandparents who read to me and parents who read to me. My grandma and grandpa would read to me Little Red Riding Hood every single day while they babysat me, and I was convinced that their neighborhood dog was the big bad wolf. And so for me, fairy tales have just been a baked-in part, I think, of my childhood and who I am. And so I had the privilege to live in Germany during my high school years and see just beautiful castles and incredible forests and amazing museums and shops. And so all of that experience, I think, just kind of fed into the fairy tale loving heart that I have. And for this book in particular, I actually had finished writing another fairy tale retelling, a Sleeping Beauty one that I hope might still get published someday. And I was sitting down and thinking, like, that was so fun. I want to do another fairy tale retelling. What should I tell? And so this might actually answer one of the questions from one of our viewers tonight, my Aunt Marcy. Hi, Aunt Marcy.
Hi, Marcy.
This actually came from just a brainstorming session. I do a lot of brainstorming by hand. I don't write by hand, but I do brainstorming and note-taking by hand. And I was kind of doodling and going through a list of fairy tales. And I had watched the Disney animated classic of Pinocchio with my girls not long before. And I felt like there's so much to this story that is left unexplored. And I would like to see a different version of this story. And so as I was brainstorming, I landed on this idea of what if it was a girl made from wood instead of a boy? What would she be like? What would her challenges be? How would she struggle and what would she deal with? And so that just started my imagination off on this journey that ended up becoming this book.
You know, I think that is a perfect segue for you to read the prologue to us, to give people an idea of what you're talking about here if they haven't read it yet.
Yeah, I would love to. So I'll read to you guys the prologue. This is sort of the fairy tale within the fairy tale, and it's what launches our story. So if you're ready for story time. I've never had a mother, but I've always had the trees. I hear them still, the joy of the beach bursting with buds, oak's relief at shedding fall's heavy fortune, the anticipation of winter's slumber with rugged skins bared to the frost. Their voices rise and fall on every twist of the wind, comforting yet stern when danger draws near. Once a widower walked among them, hunting for fresh wood. The puppetmaster liked to take his time, feeling the bark for smoothness, measuring width for usefulness. Assessing the health of each trunk, he only culled trees who had lived a good life already. He left behind those too young or too warped by the strange forces of nature. At night, as he was taking his rest in a small clearing, a woman appeared at the rim of his firelight. She was old, old beyond old, with skin more leather than flesh. Uncertain whether she was human or a force of nature itself, the puppet master invited her to share the warmth of his fire. She accepted wordlessly, her legs folding to the ground as spryly as a child's. He offered her his supper, though he hadn't much. At last, sated by the meal, the woman began to speak. You are a solitary man, Gephardt. Yes, lady. She knew his name. Your heart longs for a companion, a treasure beyond what you can make for yourself. The old crone's words pierced his heart. The puppet master was alone in the world, save for his creations. His parents were gone, his wife had died in childbirth years before, and the babe with her. He so longed for a companion, for a real family, that searing loneliness was his greatest pain. Listen well. Soon the blue moon, the rarest of all moons, will be on the rise, the woman prophesied, her voice skittery as a spider's. At its waxing, offer up one of your creations, and by the moonlight, they will be given breath. Choose wisely who to awaken. First, make a cut, finger or hand will do. With a drop of your own blood, mark for the creature a new heart. By the moon's power, the wood will become a living thing again, born of the earth and your blood. But to complete the change, you must say the words. Words, milady? Gebhardt stuttered, shocked at these wild suggestions. Such spells were outlawed, forbidden generations ago. Once, men and women sought to raise power from the earth, to bring wooden carvings to life, or to entreat a heartbeat from sculpted clay. That age ended when a royal conjurer's disastrous spell enabled a king to achieve the opposite. He turned the living to wood. Thanks to his blistering temper, more than a few wooden wives, sons, and stewards were lost to the burn pile. His regime finished in ruin, followed by a ruling heralded far and wide against elemental spells. In an attempt to safeguard the future of the monarchy, all books containing such magic spells were either sentenced to be kept under lock and key or flagrantly destroyed. The latter applied to those still living with magic words tucked within the pages of their memories. Anyone suspected of witchery or sorcery was hunted down and added to the smoking pyres of flame around the royal city. The old elemental spells were lost, their legacy now mere whispered warnings from mothers' lips. Or so the Puppetmaster had thought. These are the blue moon's words, the woman rasped. Take heed now, for there's always a cost, and I'll not repeat myself. Bitter moon and solemn blue, blood of earth and sap and dew, wake a second life anew. Wait, please, what? She silenced him by snapping a twig-like finger to her lips. The woman stood and dusted her tattered skirts, which disintegrated toward her gnarled feet. Then she left, disappearing into the trunk of a broad oak. Stunned, Gebhardt doused his fire and made his way home. He feared he'd imagined the whole thing. Had his loneliness driven him to madness? If anyone had seen what he'd seen or heard those words, they were in danger of being pitched straight into a burn pile. And if he were to go so far as to make a living creature using such magic, if discovered, the creature would be burned as an abomination. Yet, in the weeks that followed, he obeyed the old woman, scorned the law, and made a girl, the daughter he and his wife had longed for. Selecting pieces of the finest linden, he forsook constructing anything else and worked tirelessly on her. He crafted her legs so they would be sturdy but elegant, the shoulders even and strong. She emerged from the raw, a girl of about 11 years, the same as his own wee one had she lived. When it came to her face, the Puppetmaster swore his chisel was guided by another hand, the tools already knowing the way to the features sleeping in the wood. The dark hair, the slope of her nose, the wide eyes, she was always there, he claimed, waiting to be set free. When the rare blue moon rose, Gebhardt remained sequestered at home, waiting for it to peak in power, fearful of returning to the forest to perform the rite in the open. He closed the shop early, bolting the doors and shuttering the windows. He paced wildly, wearing grooves in the planked floors. The marionette had been finished for 2 days. There was nothing else to do but look at her and hope, however outrageous and pitiful that seemed. He'd asked the old tailor next door to sew him a dress. A new pair of shoes were fashioned by the cobbler. Such requests were not unusual. The Puppetmaster often relied on his fellow artisans to complete his work with their finery. When the moon peaked that fateful night, it was full and lavishly blue, the same shade as the cerulean in the Puppetmaster's paint pots. Its light was a living, ghostly thing. He waited until the rays illuminated his far workshop window, the only one he dared crack open. He held the marionette gently, bathed in moonbeams, as he knelt on the floor. From his pocket, he withdrew a small blade, a long-ago gift from his own father. With a whispered prayer and a deep slice across a scarred fingertip, he painted a heart in the place where a new one might grow. Then he uttered the old woman's clandestine words, the marionette's first lullaby, bitter moon and solemn blue. In a rush of joy and heartbreak, with a ripping breath that filled the marionette from the inside out, the wooden limbs became warm flesh. The cleverly fashioned joints on the arms and legs germinated from pins and wire to bones and sinew. A human heart hummed in the small chest. Gephardt's blood spilled through newly strung veins, flooding the marionette's cheeks and prodding her eyelids open. In wonderment, the puppet master and girl looked one another in the eyes for the first time. In those first moments, I was perhaps still more wood than girl. It's hard to say. Since a tree cannot move about, the only way for it to travel is to stand through time. The pages of its story press deeper inside with each passing year. I keep the memories of these first moments tightly pressed within. There are days when I wonder if you were to crack me open, could you still count my rings? Each significant moment sealed in a new layer to protect it from the elements. My father claims I attempted to stand, but my wobbly legs stumbled in a willowy twirl few dancers would have been graceful enough to manage, like a leaf fluttering to the forest floor. Then came the puppet master's hearty laugh and the words that never failed to bring a flood of those early memories rushing back. And so it was, I discovered your name, Pirouette. So that's the prologue.
Oh, that was beautiful. I loved it. Okay, so we have our wood, we have our lady, we have heart. Hang on, sorry, our other thing is too loud here. Talk to me about how you came up with the name Pirouette.
So I knew I wanted a P name, a name that started with P, so that there would still be a strong tie to the Pinocchio tale. I like fairy tale retellings where you kind of know early on what story you're dealing with, but you don't exactly know how it's going to play out. So I knew I wanted that from the beginning, and I played with quite a few different P names, actually, brainstorming in my notebook, until I landed on Pirouette, and it felt right to me. So she was just the chosen name.
It reminds me of the like little twirling things when they're falling down. Yes. I could see her spinning like that. That's amazing. Yeah. I love it. All right, so we'll pause right here and we'll give away our first book. Yay. Okay. The first person who types in the main character's name will have a personalized copy of the Puppetmaster's Apprentice. Lisa will, somebody's like, stop talking. I'm typing it already. We got it. Sarah. All right. So we'll get your details, Sarah, and Lisa will personalize a book to you, and we will send it to you. Super exciting.
Yay, Sarah. That's so great. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, this is exciting for me. I'm having a lot of fun today. I love it. I was very nervous, but it's going really well. So
me too. I know. This is a first for both of us, so this is fun.
All right. So, how did you come up with the names? You have these German-like people in the castle, the Duke and his dad, and then you have all the different craftsmen that live in this town. Also talk about that too. Talk about the whole world building with the crafts and the names and the saboteur. And about it.
Yeah, so I think some of the names are sort of French inspired, some are German inspired. Again, with Gephardt's name, Pirouette's father, I like the name Geppetto, and the original Pinocchio tale is Italian. So I didn't want to do Geppetto. I wanted something similar. So I picked a German sounding name for Gephardt, and it seemed to fit because it uses the same first three letters as Geppetto. So I loved that. And then we have the Margrave, who is the tyrant ruler of Tavia, the territory where Pirouette lives. And so I kind of wanted a sort of German feudal lord system. So that's kind of how I set up the world to be. And I was kind of researching different titles, different names, and I came across the name of Margrave. And I was just like so enraptured by that. I had never heard that title before. And so it is a real title that would have been used back in those days. Yep. I think it's cool because it has the word grave in it. So it already just gives the word like
that's why I thought you made it up.
Yeah, it actually is a real title. And so I just thought that was fun. So a lot of it is me hunting and pecking and finding things that just feel like they fit. And sometimes it's just names that pop in my head. So for this cast of characters, Pirouette has sort of a found family of makers. These are the Makers Guild, the people that are both her closest friends and that live with her in the territory of Tavia. So we have Nan, who's the potter, and she's a master potter, even though she's quite young. Just like Pirouette becomes sort of a master puppet maker in her own right, even though she's young as well. We have Fonzo, who's a glass blower, glassmith. And then we have Tiffin, who he works for the blacksmith. And who am I forgetting? Oh, Bran and the tailor.
Bran, yeah, you have to have him.
And then there's the puppet master, Gephardt, her father. So who's a master toy maker and marionette maker. So it was super fun to come up with their names, their personalities, and all the different ways that they support one another. Because that's what friends do. And I think that's what makers do. Craftsmen and craftspeople, you know, they support each other and they help each other out where they can. So that was just a really fun group to build in my imagination.
And I like that they all had like apprentices, and so they were all teaching someone else how to do the craft, which showed how we used to pass those skills down within the family. I thought that was neat. And some of them weren't in the family. And also Nan was my favorite character because she reminded me of myself. Very crotchety.
She's spirited. She's very spirited.
I loved it so much. And you wrote that before we even met. So that was really cool.
Perfect.
She is one of my favorites. All right. So in this book, someone requests different puppets to be made. And one of them is called the Saboteur. Talk about a little bit about the Saboteur. Why name it the Saboteur, and why did she decide to go the way she did with that? Talk a little bit about that, if you can. If we can do it without giving it away.
Sure. So one of the rulers of Tavia requests that Pirouette build this assassin puppet. And so that's a big commission. It's a big job to build something like that. Pirouette's never created a full life-size marionette like that on her own. So that in and of itself makes it a bit of a challenge. And then it's also a little bit confusing why she's being asked to make such a creature, a creation. And she isn't really sure what she's making it for. But when a tyrant basically tells you what to do, and she just doesn't have much choice. So she also is trying to save her father at the same time, who's been imprisoned. And so in her efforts to save her dad and to satisfy the tyrant of Tavia, she makes this assassin puppet. And those were some really fun scenes to write. First of all, to imagine what would an assassin marionette life-size look like. So I did my best there. Hopefully I did her justice. But yeah, so that was just super fun.
I love the title. Assassin puppet, that's what you.
Yep, and they asked for this marionette to be a saboteur, and so that's what she creates, is an assassin. So
I love it.
You gotta wait to read it to find out what happens with that.
Yes, you do. All right, talk a little bit about, so Bran is a good friend of hers, and they live next door to each other. I mean, she has this weird relationship with him. Talk about how you got them from being just neighbors to where they are throughout the book, because she goes back and forth with him.
Yeah, so Bran is really ultimately her best friend. When she kind of is brought to life, she spends the first few years of her life kind of being sheltered and being at home with her father and kind of learning the customs and the language of humanity. And so Bran is kind of really the first friend that she sort of lets in to her heart, so to speak, and lets into her inner circle. And he happens to live next door. He's the tailor's son and the tailor's apprentice. So I knew I wanted to have some romance in there. And so I wanted just a great sort of sweet guy, and Bran was who came to mind. And so they build a friendship, and he wants it to be more than that, and she wants it to be more than that. But she's also sort of fearful, knowing that because of her wooden origins that she has to keep secret because the spell that made her was outlawed. She's just fearful of revealing her origins to anybody, afraid that either they'll reject her or that it could put both of them into danger. So it creates some interesting tension.
Yeah, it's a great segue that she's wood and she doesn't want anybody to know. Let's talk about the wood. When she's lying, talk about that. Because she's related to Pinocchio, how do you show when she's doing that?
Sure. So again, I felt like in the Pinocchio story, there just are some key touch points, things that I felt like I wanted to have in there so that the reader could connect. Oh, this is a Pinocchio retelling. And so we all know in the classic tale, when Pinocchio lies, his nose grows. And that's just a super obvious, thing to everybody that's what's happening. And so Pirouette has some sort of painful consequences that happen when she lies. So I'm trying to think if I can say it without giving too much away. But basically, when she lies, she gets splinters, and it's made obvious to her, for example, and she tries to hide it. She tries really hard to hide it because she doesn't want anybody else asking questions or getting too concerned. So when that happens, not only does she feel bad that she's lied, but then she literally has this painful thing happening to her body that she has to deal with. So and that also creates some interesting tension for her throughout the book in different situations.
It's a good way that you modernize this fairy tale retelling. It kind of like brings a lot more to this character, makes them more three-dimensional. And she can, in some ways, hide some of her lies, as Pinocchio could not. So I thought that was also interesting. But how do you do that? How do you make a good fairy tale retelling without just telling us the same things over and over, or obscuring the whole story?
Yes. So I feel like I have this metaphor for fairy tale retellings that I think what we all want as readers, we want something to feel like a comfortable old coat. We want the framework of the story to feel like we know it and we recognize it, and we're going to a place that feels like, I like this. But at the same time, I think every fairy tale retelling needs to come at it either from a new character's point of view, a different perspective, or it needs to have some sort of twist we've never seen before. So with that coat metaphor, I feel like we need to have something where you stick your hand in a pocket of your coat and you pull out something you didn't realize was there, and you're like, oh my gosh, this changes everything. Sort of this forgotten treasure or this unknown hidden treasure. And so that's what I was really trying to do with this story, is sort of find these little secret, interesting twists and just sort of a point of view that had never been told for this tale before. And that's what I think makes a good fairy tale retelling.
Great, that sounds great. I love it. I'm gonna have to read it again too with that perspective. Okay, so let's talk about how long did it take you to write this book, and how long did it take you to get this book published?
Well, it's a long is the key word in that. Yeah, so it took me, this out of all the books that I've drafted, this took me almost a year to write. I was writing it during most of 2016, and then I spent several months editing, getting feedback from my beta readers. And then this is the book that I was able to get my amazing agent, Laura Crockett, and she's watching right now. Hi, Laura. Thank you, Laura. So this is the book that I was able to connect with Laura on. And then the book went on submission, I think, in early 2018. And so it did not sell then until fall of 2019. So it was on submission, I think, for over a year. So this has just been a very long, slow process. And that's just for this book. I started writing back in 2012 when my kids were babies, and I was just itching for a creative outlet. And I was reading so many great young adult books and novels and new series. And I was like, I wonder if I can do this. And I just sat down and decided to start writing and giving it a try. And so I've been trying to get published ever since then. So it really has just been a long journey, but the wheels of publishing turn slowly. But now I just feel like all that hard work and all that time is paying off, because this is just so amazing and so satisfying.
It is amazing. I love the cover. I love the trailer. You said it took a long time.
Yeah.
Did you write anything in the middle, or how did you keep yourself going while this was out on submission?
Yeah. So while this was out on submission, I was working on the next book. That was a Peter Pan retelling, which is currently sitting in my Word document graveyard, maybe to be revisited at some point. But that is usually what I do. So usually if I would be querying for a book or a book is on submission, I'm always wanting to work on the next thing, mostly to distract myself from the fact that the book is out there getting reviewed. And plus it just feels then I'm more excited about whatever I'm working on next and gives you sort of a fresh energy for that next book.
Love it. Love it. And speaking of next book, before we talk about that, let us give away our next book. Okay, let's see. I wrote down a question, and my question was just a random one. Lisa, if you can, if your phone's near you, send me a number between 1 and 10, and people will have to try to guess what it is. And the person who comes closest, you can't guess until she puts the number in. Stop it. She doesn't want to see it.
Okay. Did it come through?
Okay, I have her number. Okay, now you're guessing. Okay, well, it looks like Marcy is the closest. Aunt Marcy, you got it. Oh, okay, hang on one sec. I'm going to have to switch from my computer to my phone. It looks like I'm almost dead, and because I'm not home, I didn't bring my charger. So I will switch. No. But we will give away a book to Marcy first.
Awesome.
Look, Marcy, this one will be personalized to you, Aunt Marcy. So think about what you'd like for her to say. All right, and give me 1 second. I'm gonna do let's take a little intermission.
You are fine. No problem.
Hopefully this will work seamlessly. I've never done this before.
Would you like me to read just another page or two from the middle while you're doing that?
That would be great.
All right, I had just 2 pages here in the middle that I kind of pulled out to do another little reading. So.
On the focus.
Okay. You remember, Piero, what we talked about the night you finished the saboteur? He asked, brushing my nose gently with his thumb, as if it hasn't been on my mind nearly every waking moment since, despite all the chaos. I'm so glad you told me. So many things about you make sense to me now. Was I that confusing? He tips my chin up so that my eyes are forced to meet his. Not confusing, complex. I've never known anyone touched by magic before. But the way you work with wood and the way the puppets seem to come alive under your hands, that look you get in your eyes sometimes when you're carving, as if you're hearing voices. It all makes sense now. What was it like? Do you remember? Before the spell or after? Both. Oh, I start halting, unused to speaking of such personal memories out loud. I remember my father and how big he seemed, how kind. And my body, how strange it felt to move and to walk, to go wherever I wished. People are always gallivanting about, chasing after things, looking after things. It all took a good deal of time to get used to. And before, his voice drops low, his breath on my ear sends a flutter down my neck. Before, I remember back to what seems like eons ago, when I stood with roots and not feet, with branches bared beneath every storm and phase of the moon, a time when the passing seasons were the only clock I knew, a time that felt sacred. Before, it was different. It seems that in some ways I knew more then. I understood things I've now forgotten, the language of the birds, the way of the flowers, the signals of the sky, so many things I've lost. He presses his lips to the top of my head. When I was younger, I used to imagine that all of my lost things, a favorite rock or a bit of paper or my best sewing kit, had lives of their own that had just gone on without me. They weren't lost at all. Perhaps that's how it will be for us someday, Piero. We'll all realize the things and people we've lost aren't really lost at all. They've just gone on journeying without us, he says hopefully. Perhaps. I squeeze his hand and nestle my head onto his shoulder. But Brand's fanciful idea brings me little comfort. I've lost a father, a friend, and a masterpiece in the space of mere days. And now, one of those has begun a journey into darkness beyond the limits of my imagination. Would that I could turn the clock back to the time before we all were lost.
I love that. Okay, hopefully, can you hear me?
Yep, you're great.
Good, it worked. Yay. I love that.
Good job.
I mean, I had to take some emotional writing. How did you get those words and this is like crafts. Like, how did you get the words that way so that we would feel the loss that she's feeling and hope for past?
Yeah, I feel like it just involves, for me, I almost see it like as a movie in my head, and that's what I write. So for me, it just really involved getting into Pierrot's skin and thinking about times in my life where I've had loss of expectation, fear, and just imagining what it would be like to be in her skin and be in her shoes. So that's kind of where it comes from. It's just from that and that imagination, that part of me. And then a really great editor and great agent who help make sure that that message is coming through and that it is clear for people to understand. But yeah, all in the imagination for me.
Speaking of imagination, there's a part where we're in this room and the entire room has marionettes around it, and not the nice ones, the very scary ones. And I really would, I had to like turn on the lights when I was reading that part. How did you come up with that? It was so creepy. Talk to us about, like, do you have puppets everywhere? What inspired this puppet scary room?
Sure. So I think a lot of that comes from partially imagination, but partially from my time in Germany. I got to go into several toy museums and several toy shops, and they still have a lot of like the old wooden carved toys and the old marionettes. And I think puppets are equally part fascinating, beautiful, and sort of scary. They're creepy, like clowns are for a lot of people.
Yes.
And so I think that it was just really kind of drawing on those memories and those experiences of what I imagined all these puppets would look like and what it would feel like to just have a room full of all different sorts of marionettes, all shapes and sizes, and what that would feel like for somebody like Pirouette, and if they might come alive, what would happen. And so, yeah.
Oh, so scary. Speaking of scary, make sure you answer the poll about which one is scariest to you, a live musical, a live play, or a live puppet show. Which one would you be most afraid of? And we'll pick someone from that for our next winner. But before we get to that, let's talk about what you're working on next.
Okay. So right now, I'm actually drafting another book that's in the same world as the Sleeping Beauty retelling that I've done. So I'm hoping to get that published. That'd be awesome. And then I'm hoping to get the chance to tell more fairy tales in that world. So the story I'm working on right now is just a very similar environment to this Pirouette story. There's old forests and villages and towns. And so it's sort of this old European small town feel. So that's a super fun setting just to tell all kinds of fairy tales in. And the book that I'm working on right now is a Red Riding Hood / The Boy Who Cried Wolf / Beauty and the Beast fairy tale mashup. That's what I'm calling it right now.
Okay, I love that. I'm trying to think of what that would look like too. So of those three mashups, what's the first character that came to you that made you want to do that?
It's actually a character in my Sleeping Beauty story that I'm kind of going back in time and telling her tale. So it's her story. It's the mother of one of the main characters in the Sleeping Beauty tale. And so she really is the Little Red Riding Hood character. And so I'm coming up with all sorts of interesting reasons why that's who she is and who she gets to be and what that means for her future.
Okay, so, and how does that The Boy Who Cried Wolf? I get the wolf part from Riding Hood, and also then I guess I get the beast part too. Wow, I want to read that now, so I need you.
There's going to be wolves. Yeah.
Okay, more than one wolf. Wolf.
Yep.
Wolf, plural.
I think so. I think so.
Another young adult novel.
Yeah. Yep. That's kind of what I'm really into writing right now. So I don't see myself changing anytime soon, but yeah, I just love young adult fiction and young adult fantasy. So that's where I am for right now.
Okay, so your girls are younger though. So how do you satisfy their craving for reading?
So we are huge fans of the library, and thank goodness for the library. We would not have survived 2020. So yeah, they know they can't read this quite yet. I think my 10-year-old could read it. It isn't that she couldn't read the words, but the story's just a little bit maybe mature. She'll be ready probably in 2 years for it. It's really probably most ideal. I think ages 14 to 17 or 14 to 18 in terms of young adults would enjoy it most, and hopefully lots of adults as well. because I love young adult fiction, and I've just turned 40 this week. So,
oh, happy birthday! Wow.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
amazing.
Yeah, so we read lots as a family. I read out loud to them all the time, and I have since they were babies, and we are frequent visitors of the library, and they love getting new books for birthdays and Christmas. So reading is just a big part of our life, and they're both great readers, which I'm super grateful for. So hi, Lely and Bree, if you're still watching.
So you said that, you recently rediscovered young adult literature. What led to that?
So when I graduated from college, I kind of had this idea, like, I'm a grown-up now, I'm going to get a grown-up job, and I should probably start reading like adult fiction and adult romance. And so I did do that for several years. And then one of my good friends at work, Jamie, came to me and she's like, Lisa, there's a series, you need to read it. I know you wouldn't normally like vampire books, but you need to read the Twilight series. It's this new thing. Just try it. Trust me, you'll love it. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. So I read the Twilight series and I fell in love with it, all of it. I'm Team Jacob forever. And so that just made my brain go, oh my goodness, like this is what young adult fiction is now. It was like during those early 2000s, like a gap of about 5 to 6 years since I'd been in high school till I was an adult. I had just missed out, and there were all these amazing new series and new authors. So that basically just sent me on a massive young adult fiction fantasy binge. And that is all I read, basically up until the point that I started writing myself. So
amazing.
I love it.
I have a couple more questions, and then we could take some questions from the audience, which I see people have put some in. All right.
Yes, thank you guys for all interacting. Your comments are so fun.
Okay, so I would like to talk about the fact that your book has really strong girl characters. That's one thing we have in our store. Our motto is protect the girl child. So how did you, I don't know if it's how or why did you decide to uplift women in this way?
Yeah, I feel like that is actually a theme in all of my books. I just think that women are so incredible. I feel like we are the fabric holding the world together. And that's probably never more true than right now in 2020. And so I just like it's really important to convey that in stories, like the power of female friendship, women facing big challenges and overcoming incredible odds. Girls need to see that they're super capable. And in Pirouette's case, she's young, but she basically becomes a master puppet maker. And so my hope is that people would walk away from this book feeling like whether you're 18 or you're 87, you can make beautiful things in the world, and you are so capable and you're so strong. So I hope that comes through.
It does. It does come through. All right. Well, let's see if we have any questions that you haven't answered yet.
Sure.
Oh, will there be an audiobook?
Yes, there will. And actually, I think it's available on Amazon right now, maybe Audible, some of the other audiobook retailers. But I need to download it. I'm very excited to listen to it. So I haven't got to listen to it yet.
Do you know who reads it?
Yes, she's a Broadway actress, a voice actor. Her name is Liz Pierce, and she's fabulous. And she has a beautiful voice and British accent. So I'm so excited for that.
Do you get any say in this? Like, your cover is really beautiful, and you don't always see the first book. How much say do you have in this process?
Well, it may be different for every author, different with every publisher. The team at Page Street has been incredible, and they definitely let me see the cover and kind of speak into it and give, a few opinions beforehand. But it was already super strong, so I'm just thrilled, with the way that it came out. So I didn't get to design it myself. They did that. Laura Benton at Page Street designed the cover, and she did an awesome job. But I did get to give some feedback, so that was super cool. And I think with the audiobook, I don't necessarily get to choose the narrator, but I get to kind of weigh in. And when they chose Liz Pierce for that, I was like, yay, that's perfect. So I just feel super fortunate.
Other books, or you just knew her?
I got to hear a sample of her reading. And as soon as I heard her voice, I was just like, oh, yes, I can't wait to listen to her read the whole thing. Because I think I would probably run out of voice after chapter 1. So I'm excited to hear a pro read it all out loud.
Pretty good the parts you also want to point out, people, Libro.fm is the independent bookseller audiobook place. when you buy your audiobooks from Libro.fm, you get to choose which bookstore you're supporting. So they do a lot for local bookstores to help us kind of work out there. So it's when you're looking for the audiobook, go through that.
Awesome.
All right. So Leslie has a question. What has writing this book and going through the process of getting it published taught you about writing for yourself?
Oh gosh, I think that patience is a virtue, and I don't have it yet mastered, but I'll get there. So, but if anything, I think it's just that, you know, a good story, whether this got published or not, I feel like it's a great story and I'm super proud of it. And I feel like it's just kind of a timeless tale. So I hope that people, you know, whether it's this year or next year, feel like they could pick it up and be just as enchanted by it and love it as much as I do.
Did you choose Pinocchio because it was your favorite fairy tale, or do you have a favorite fairy tale?
I think I chose Pinocchio because I felt like as soon as I latched onto that hook of if there was a girl made from wood instead of a boy, what would that be like? So that hook was what drew me in, and I didn't know any other Pinocchio retellings. So I felt like it might be really unique and might be able to find a place. It is not technically my favorite fairy tale retelling, but now it is. So, but one of my favorite fairy tales, I love the 12 Dancing Princesses, and I love The Princess and the Pea. So maybe someday I'll get the chance to tell those stories again in a unique way.
So if you would do a gender swap 12 Dancing Princes, I would really like to see how you would make that work.
Ooh, giving me good ideas. I like that.
All right. Do you imagine a movie when you're writing? Do you like picture this in your head? How does that work?
Yeah, I definitely do. I'm just a super visual person. So anytime I have to like give a presentation or have a conversation with somebody at work, I'm literally rehearsing it in my head all the time. That's the drama nerd in me. I was in a lot of musicals and productions and stuff in high school and college. And so I think that's just how I write as well. I'm literally imagining a scene in my head and I'm writing what I see. And I don't know how to explain how that works, but it does. That's how it works.
How did you write an entire book? I just don't even know how a person can sit down. Like, did you write bits and pieces at a time? Did you start from the beginning and the middle? How did you do that?
I sort of have just a rough outline. I'm naturally more of what they call a pantser, which means you fly by the seat of your pants. You get an idea and you sit down and you just go. So that's my natural inclination. As I get so excited by an idea, I sit down and start seeing it in my head and I just write it. That can create problems on the back end because then you sometimes wind up with no plot or problems. So I'm trying to be better about structuring it and planning better ahead of time. But yeah, that's kind of how I do it. I just sit down and I write from start to finish, chapter by chapter, just what I'm seeing in my head.
Seriously, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
You just wow, that's kind of amazing.
Thanks.
You said you had to, like, you went back and edited it before it. Did you do that before submission, or did you find somebody and then they said you need to fix this before we can shop it?
Yeah, I have a small group of, my husband's one of them, and some of my best friends are my critique partners and my first readers. So they read it first. They know me really well. They know my style and what I like, and they're both great storytellers as well. So I totally trust their feedback, and so they can kind of go through and be like, this doesn't make sense. I don't get this. This is weak here. And so I spent a couple months editing that first. And then with my agent, Laura, she helped me edit it and polish it as well. And then it goes out in submission. And then when the editor buys it, then you go through another editing process with them too. So this is probably draft like number 478. That's what it feels like at least. But that's just the process that it goes through. So it makes it the best book that it can be in the end.
Did you have a particular like place you wanted it to land or anything like that, or were you just like hoping it just get published, or what were you thinking? Because that's a hard process to get out there to find the agent to and like just go through this whole thing. Like how did you approach that?
I've always wanted to get published ever since I started writing. I just think it's so fun, and I feel like I wanted to have a real book in the world. A lot of people go the self-publishing route, but I just felt like that wasn't something that I was that interested in. I kind of wanted to do traditional publishing. And so in order to do that, you need to get an agent first. That's really ideal. And then hopefully that agent can help you sell your book. And so it just took a really long time to get there with just the right agent and just the right book. But it did happen for me. So it's kind of like a big cosmic matchmaking process. Each step of the way, you're looking for the right agent who loves your work and can champion your work. And then again, the right editor who loves your work and feels like they can sell it. So it's pretty crazy how it all worked out.
It is kind of crazy. It's awesome, though, because it's awesome for me that you were right here. I love that. And somebody asked, the poll is at the very bottom. Well, on my screen is at the bottom in the middle, so you can answer the poll right there. But while they are trying to answer the poll, give us some recommendations. First, I would love a fairy tale retelling that you read that you think we all should read.
Yes, so I wrote a few of these down here. I really love the book Tiger Lily by Jodi Lynn Anderson. That's a Peter Pan retelling from Tiger Lily's perspective. So that's great. I just absolutely love that. I love the Splintered series by A.G. Howard, which is an Alice in Wonderland retelling. So that's a whole series. And those are really fun. Let's see what else. I love Sun and Moon and Ice and Snow by Jessica Day George. That's a retelling of a fairy tale I'd never heard of before. It's a Nordic legend, east of the sun, west of the moon. So that was a really unusual one, but I love her writing. So those are a couple good ones, but there's so many. It's so hard to pick.
All right. So do you read anything other than fairy tales and fairy tale retellings?
I do. Normally I read pretty widely. I love memoir, biography. I love historical fiction, fantasy, both adult and young YA. So I kind of read all over the board, whatever just looks good. I'm definitely one of those people that goes to the library or the bookstore and I'm like, ooh, that looks like a good cover. And I pick it up and take it home. So I have a couple books I can recommend if you're ready for a couple of recommendations of what I'm reading next. So this is next on my list, A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne Brown. This is just a gorgeous book, and this is another young adult fantasy. So I'm super excited. I got this from Kathy's store, so that's awesome.
It was a great book.
I can't wait to dive into it. You finished it? Good. Yeah. I can't wait to see it. From another Page Street author, this is Joanna Ruth Meyer's book, Into the Heartless Wood. This is advanced reader copy, and I just finished it. It's coming out in January of 2021. And this is a gender-swapped Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid retelling, and it is beautiful. It has a murderous tree siren in it, which was so unique. And I was just like drawn in from page one. So this is fantastic. So look for this coming in January. And then Kathy had asked if my girls had any book recommendations for kids or middle grade books. And so my 10-year-old who's in 4th grade, she loves fairy tale retellings, but this is The Tale of Emily Winsnap. This is a whole series. I think there are 9 or 10 of these now. So she's a big fan of those. And then my 2nd grader is getting super into Zoe and Sassafras. These are so cute. Girls and boys would enjoy these, but there's little mysteries to solve, and there's like a lot of STEM and science projects, and she's always telling me cool facts that she's learned from these, so I love that.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome. And that Asus, that Zoe Sassafras just had its 1,000,000 copy printed, so we just got to yeah, it's super for that age group. It's because awesome. It has to offer, and it has that science bent.
Yeah.
People really love it. All right, so we're going to give one more book before we say good night. I don't think people found the poll, so we have to come up with another way to give this book away. Let's see, we have 21 people are here right now. Let's see who lives in town. The first person from South Bend who puts their name in the chat will win, but you have to be
I think it's Derek.
Still doing the question before they already answered. Looks like Derek. I don't know. Is that Derek or Levon? So they have it.
Hi, Derek and Levon. Thanks for joining us, you guys.
And Lisa made these wonderful little packets, and in addition to the signed book plates, and those will be personalized to you though. But she made these incredible little packets that has a bookmark, a book plate, and she carved a pencil for us. I mean, basically, did. She went to the tree as a twig and she just carved it out just like the Puppetmaster. So
Magic.
10 people
Magic.
will get to have one of these. I'm so excited about it. Well, Lisa, that concludes our night. I am so excited. That was so much fun. I'm glad we had a chance to do this. We got to meet and chat, and I can't wait to see what's next. But before we go, someone wants to know, will there be a sequel? Because it was open at the end, and someone also named me would like to know, will there be a second one?
Well, right now I don't have a sequel planned, but I try to always like leave a little crack there, like leave the door open for that possibility. So you never know. But thank you again, Kathy, for hosting tonight. And I just want to say thank you for the amazing work that you're doing here in Michiana through Brain Lair Books and just creating such a diverse, inclusive space for kids and encouraging kids to read. I love what you're doing. It's so important. So we're just grateful for you and thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining. Bye.